And next up is our amazing Mandy. She's going to talk to you about all things commercial.
Yes, and I was super excited because honestly, I haven't gotten to dive into commercial too much. But so looking into it, I went back to 2022 and again for Oneida and Vilas.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And definitely have noticed a decrease in solds for commercial property. Really interesting. In 2022, I noticed that it was more restaurants and bars that were selling, and then 2023 came and that definitely halted. So restaurants and bars kind of went to the bottom of the tier, and then vacant land, commercial vacant land was actually at the top. So that was
interesting.
Yeah. So and then purchase price and versus what it sold for, in both years they were about 5 to 10% under the asking price. So 2022 you saw it selling a little bit more closer to asking, if not at asking, but 2023
there's negotiations.
Negotiations for commercial property were definitely a lot higher than residential, I feel, from what I experienced.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, so it was interesting. But for 2024, looking into it, I definitely think that the inventory will remain steady. But I think the hot commercial properties, especially in this area up here, and I think we're starting to see that, is going to start being the multifamily, apartments, and warehouses, which I think storage, like those types of things, I think we've started to already see that kind of happening. But yeah, interest rates should continue to decrease, and then what they're saying nationally is that the lending is going to become a little bit easier for commercial real estate in 2024. So
interesting. So I have a question for you, Mandy.
Yes.
Tell me, so when you talk about the trends you saw for what was selling, is there anything that you even formulated or anybody else that went through their brain as to why you would think the restaurant and that sort of sale kind of quieted down going from 2022 to 2023? I know I always have my opinion on everything, but anything that went through anybody's minds here?
I'm sure Alicia, yeah. you go first.
No, you go. You did your dig.
Honestly, I think that I don't know. I don't
Do you think
really
it's
know.
labor shortage?
I think so. I think people come up here and they see just going out that there's a shortage of help in the area. So I think that it definitely scares people who aren't from here to even come in here to purchase an investment and to be able to house the labor. So, yeah.
That was sort of what my thought was. Alicia?
Well, I just think of, the difference in the changes that COVID brought to that type of industry,
Yeah.
especially in our area. We're very tourist heavy. That's our economy. But I know I've worked with not quite a few, but a few over the few years with regards to restaurants and things like that. And as real estate, actual raw real estate, right? When you look at commercial, you've got real estate, you've got business. And that real estate has increased to a point where sometimes you're figuring out how those numbers make sense, because the actual land value has increased, the building has increased based on market comparables,
Right.
but maybe the business is still where it's at. So I know the one thing that goes to that, and maybe a boost and a change in those sales, make sure you find the right lender, because they're actually creating those programs to make it more affordable for people to build a business from markets that might have higher real estate heavy values versus the business values themselves. And I mean, you on the listing side know what that means to sit down and look at that.
And I think that's an interesting point, and I think like SBA is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a great experience with the SBA. Well, actually the experience with the SBA wasn't as amazing, but what the product was able to do for the consumer was amazing. I actually went home and said to my husband, let's go find a business and use SBA, because they did amazing things. So I think anybody who's looking has to consider that. But I guess the other thing I think about is, I think people come up here and they also think, because of the seasonality, like, will I be able to be successful? So just a quick poll around the table. If you were working with a business buyer, what is a business you think the Northwoods needs that would be successful up here?
Who cut me last?
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that we're seeing this trend on breweries and whiskey shops and vodka shops and wineries. I mean, Three Lakes now has a downtown winery, or Eagle River has Mary Kate's. Minocqua, I'm told, has one as well. I haven't been to it yet, which is surprising because I like Milan. But so things like that, these more specific, talk about niching down. So it seems like the niching down businesses are actually being incredibly successful right now. So I think that if you have something that you're passionate about, I think downtown we're going to be getting a all knitting shop, a yarn and knitting shop. You can't be a whole lot more specific than that. So I think I would say if you have a passion about something, you might be able to turn that into a business model.
Right. Well, I think that's the biggest thing is when you're looking at smaller communities that don't have a lot of outside cultural influence, I guess, and they're very, seasonal heavy. What can you do that provides something of value to both your seasonal clientele and your local clientele? And I think there's a shift in that.
Yep.
I mean, I'm young, I like to do things, I find good things to do, but it's also fun when there's somewhere to go and support that local business that's providing that service. So I know we do a lot of that, and even like Eagle River Pet Company, I know they use some of those Eagle River revitalization loans and things like that, and some of the other businesses around. It's just things that we haven't seen, and it's cool to see that we don't have to drive 45 minutes to get to it.
It's all right in our little hometown. Awesome. Well, thank you, Manny. That was fantastic.
You're welcome.